Hello and welcome to the news that didn't make the news. Somebody's here. I wanted to come on here and share an experience that I had yesterday. Before it gets any hotter in here. I don't know where all of my viewers are, but here in Cincinnati, we've had really extreme crazy temperatures and crazy temperatures and crazy humidity, as most of you guys know. I'm a landscaper and it is really super intense. Hello, Amanda. Hello, Rhapsody in Blue. Okay, I do apologize, but in order to get this message out with complete and total clarity, I'm going to cover up the comments, which you all know, if you've been here before, are extremely distracting to me and have the tendency to pull me off course because the messages don't usually come from 3D physical reality. They come from somewhere else. And while I'm listening to, looking at, or watching the haters, it distracts me from that. So, yes. Hello. Yes, it is Tina. My name is Tina Hammond. This is the news that didn't make the news. Hello, Eli. How are you? I have your I can see your names, but I can't see your comments. I don't know what all you guys have been going through lately. As most of you know, and it feels silly to constantly repeat, I'm out of all news cycles, including underground, military, all of these things, and I have been for a really long time. But we are at the point where we are and will currently experience more of the crashing of the 3D physical system, and we're talking about things that are not right. When we talk about crashing our physical reality, we never crash anything that's truly meant for us, whether that's a relationship, a job, a governmental situation, governmental corruption, whatever it is. We do not crash a system where things are working for humanity, and that's what I want to talk to you about today. I have been very scarce on my own channel, the news that didn't make the news. Unfortunately, with landscaping, and I've decided to I might even take the week off or work every other day, because this heat is so extreme that the things that are coming through to me in a non-physical way, I'm having a very hard time acclimating to, because the heat is so insane that I can go for 8 or 10 hours without being able to eat or anything else. I'm getting dehydrated no matter what I do. And all of these things put us into survival mode. We all perhaps have things in our lives, our jobs, maybe our relationships, or even external realities such as the government and the things that are happening that throw us into survival mode. So when I'm in the heat for 6, 7, 8 hours, I go into survival mode. Does my body have enough rest? Is my body cool, being given time to cool down? Am I giving myself time out of the heat to acclimate to these amazing earth changes that are happening at this time? And the answer for me has been no, because of this extreme heat, because of my inability to eat for 8 hours at a time, and the way it takes for me to calm down, relax, and let go of survival mode. So, as I said, no matter what it is for you, there are things that can really throw us into survival mode. Extreme temperatures are one of those. So that's one of the things that I'm experiencing. For you, it may be an overwhelming relationship issue or a family situation. It could be a job. But if you are being thrown into the energy of being overwhelmed, it's hard for you to acclimate to what is exactly happening around you. So if I'm outside and experiencing some sort of message or download, it may take 2 or 3 days for me to actually get it or comprehend it or acclimate to it, because in my situation of this extreme heat, but we all have different situations. The reason that I'm coming here today is to talk to you about the unseen becoming the seen. Okay, so many of you know that have been in this awakening process for a year, maybe 2 years, maybe some of you 3 decades like me. There's a lot happening behind the scenes that we are not privy to. And I do feel it necessary to remind you and remind myself and my friends on a somewhat regular basis that when you see the government saying something on Twitter, or you see people that are working with the government saying things on Twitter or saying things on social media, those are definitely not necessarily physical happenings. Okay, so say the president says this thing, right? He throws out a number, he throws out a situation. What I have been telling you for a long time, we are in the heat and in the throes of military action. So what you are seeing, what you are hearing, feeling, experiencing in the external, as far as knowing what's happening or what the president is saying or what underground militia is saying or anything else, you have to remember, and I'm your friendly reminder, that these people are quite literally talking across the table in a strategic chess game. Okay, so what I'm saying is, you see President Trump tweeting something, or Elon Musk, any of these people that you may follow, that you may be keeping an eye on. They are all working together in a way, and you have to remember, if you and I are being surveilled, some of us more heavily than others for reasons we'll find out in a minute or two, you have to be very vigilant about your energy. You have to be very vigilant about what you physically do, what you physically say, in many, many regards. So when Trump said something, or when Elon says something, or anyone that you're following says something that's part of the Alliance for Planetary Change, you cannot take that thing at face value, and you cannot take that thing at physical value, because let's say someone is throwing out a scenario or throwing out a number or throwing out something, and you're going, wow, I'm really trying to make sense of how this connects to the alliance and the planetary change, and what is this message saying to me, or what is this message saying to the people, or saying to humanity. And the thing is you have to remember that the majority of this is military code. Let's just say, for example, someone puts out a tweet and says this operation is going to be, there's a chance that this operation will be 75%. 75% chance that this operation is going to be successful. Let's say that's the message or the tweet or the information that you see on social media. What I've been gathering and what I've been saying to you over the past year is, even taking that number 75, for example, that could literally be one person in the alliance saying to the other person, we are on step 7, page 5, okay, of the plan. You cannot take social media from people in the alliance at face value. They are talking across the table in a military chess game. You can look at it physically, yes. You can look at it symbolically, yes. But you have to look at the fact that this is a plan that's been around since the 80s. And maybe we're on chapter 7, act 5, okay? Instead of having believing that the president is saying, okay, well, this is actually going to be there's a 75% chance that this is going to be a successful mission, when he is probably not talking about 75% of anything. He's probably talking across the table in a chess game to tell the other players in the alliance where we are in the playbook and where we are in the plan. No, I totally understand what you're saying. Yeah, right. No, I'm not saying, Mark, that you don't believe anything on social media. Maybe you weren't here at the beginning, and so let me say this again. What I said was big players in the alliance. I am not a big player in the alliance. I do not post on Twitter. I do not normally, for many years, I haven't even shared military information at all. So what I said was, let me reiterate that one more time because that's really important. What I said was, if you are talking about the president, if you're talking about Elon Musk, if you're talking about MonkeyWorks, if you're talking about some big channel, some person that has a really big following and they are posting something, what they are doing is they are posting that thing to inform the other players of the strategy and where we are within this military strategy. Hopefully this connection is okay because we really dropped off here. So I hope that that explains it for you, Mark. This is a very little channel. I have just over 1,000 viewers, and I'm not putting out Twitter or throwing any number sequences or any military code to any other players. I am simply here to show you the messages that come through to me and what I intuit that those things mean. And when I give you a message or share a message that I've received or share information with you that I have received, I will tell you what I think or what I feel like it means. But those things, as I always say to you, are open for your interpretation on what you think they mean, and that as well. Again, so talking about really popular key players in the government, and in not only in the government, but in the alliance, and specifically 3-letter agencies, okay, that are using social media platforms to talk across the table in code so that they know where they are. You just have to realize the level, again, of surveillance. It is starting to get very warm in here already, so I'm not going to be here for a very long time. What I'm coming here to tell you is, most of you have known for a long time that there is a lot of military behind the scenes strategy that is happening, that has been talked about, that has been happening for a long time, but is hitting a crescendo. Okay, and it's coming through in a very, very physical way. And what I want to do here is share with you something that happened yesterday. And now, just so you know, no back and forth, no shout outs to people. I know that that's what people love on YouTube. It's for interaction. But what I'm interacting with is a space where I can pull in information for you. And that space is not in the physical realm. And so interacting with the physical realm can pull me out of it. I am not advanced enough of a being to be able to look at your questions, your highs, your shout outs, or your negative comments or anything else, and be able to pull in directly to you what I'm intuiting that's going on. Now, feel free to take this any way you want. Feel free to use your own intuition and see where that gets you. As I mentioned, for the new people, I am a landscaper. And yesterday I was on the phone with my friend, Tina. No, I wasn't talking to myself. My friend's name is actually Tina. And we were having a conversation while we were on the phone for 2 hours. We have conversations pretty much about everything. There is nothing that is unlimited or off the table when it comes to these conversations with Tina. And what we were talking about was how parts and moving pieces to the opposition or to those who wish to control and manipulate the planet do not have the ability to create anything new, and everything is essentially coming from a loop. So if you maybe think that chemtrails are a recent invention, that anyone who studied it will know that chemtrails, they will tell you the inception of chemtrails was just before the Vietnam War. They used it to make things really difficult, to get supplies, to get back and forth from camp. It was a very hilly area, so they flooded it. And so, instead of doing battle or being in the middle of war, there was a lot of mudslides and a lot of messy people pretty much having a mud wrestle. So if you study that, what the information that you will come across is the information that this is a relatively new development. And the thing is that it's absolutely not. Now, when we're talking about a loop, there are a group of people that don't have the ability to imagine and therefore create something or change the reality that humanity itself is creating. And so they just keep repeating the same thing over and over and over again. It would be like if you were told the way to get the job you've always wanted was to have this certain resume, practice being interviewed, all these things that would go along with you being a more viable candidate for the job. If you are confident, if you know what you're talking about, if you have worked on your line of work for a long time, maybe you have perfected your craft and you can openly speak and communicate about that in order to get that job. Well, this is the same thing. In order to manipulate and control and usurp over humanity, the loop just keeps playing out where they keep doing the same things over and over again. Okay, we're at a certain solar cycle where humanity wakes up when the consciousness expands. How are we going to control that? Let's use that as an example. And so this is what we were talking about, Tina and I. We were talking about that loop. And she said, they just keep doing the same shit over and over and over again. And it's so interesting that she said that, because a couple weeks ago, and I know Ancient Aliens is not the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. But I was watching Ancient Aliens and they were talking about cosmic wars in the heaven or cosmic wars in the sky. And in all these paintings from thousands and thousands of years ago, there are X's in the sky. And their interpretation of that was, they're, good versus evil, one side versus the other side, the yin versus the yang, duking it out, right? For physical reality or for physical commodities or for physical control and manipulation of a planet. But when I saw those X's in the sky, it hit me. That's a loop. Every time we get to this point of awakening, every time we get to this point of expanded consciousness, they pull out those weather manipulation tools, that microwave technology, if you will. Okay, so putting particles in the air and microwaving them to change the energy, to change the weather, to change, bypass, or try to suppress human consciousness and the expansion of it. Okay, so when I saw that in Ancient Aliens, this picture or this artwork from thousands of years ago with all the X's in the sky, that's when it hit me. It's like, this was not started. The inception of this was not for the Vietnam War in the 60s. The inception of this is, who knows, a millennia ago. And it's what they do every single time we get to this, because they don't have another solution, because they can't create anything, and because they don't have a creative mind. They simply have a strategy of what happens in wartime. So when humanity starts to consciously expand, they look at that as a time of war, right? A time of war, a time of suppression, all of this other stuff. Now, do I expect everyone to understand this? I don't, because there are multiple kinds of beings on this planet. There are those that are cloned in a laboratory. And if you look at the only piece of news that I've seen, probably in 6 months, is that Ghislaine Maxwell sang like a bird in a cage and talked about the real reason that they were hiding all this information and such secrecy was around Epstein Island did not have to do with the trafficking and the other things that we already know, but it was the fact that there was cloning facilities. So there are many beings who look like us, talk like us, and act like us who are cloned. So there are synthetic beings walking around. There are non-player characters walking around. There are all these other kinds of beings. Hugest reason why you shouldn't try to wake everyone up, because not everyone is capable of waking, or at least they're not capable of awakening at this moment. I won't put a permanent stamp on that and tell you that that is a permanent block or suppression of their consciousness, because we don't know that in the current state that we are evolving right now. We don't know that that's the case. However, when you're looking at that information and they're talking about, you know, those beings and all of that stuff, and as I said, that's the only piece of physical 3D reality, governmental secrecy, underground, whatever, that I have heard in 6 months. If Tina doesn't tell me about it, if Lynn doesn't tell me about it, then I don't know about it, because I'm at the place of solely using my intuition and not using things in physical reality. Oh no, Mark, I didn't think you were mad at me. I was just trying to explain. I can see, like I said, if you weren't here at the beginning of that, and here I am saying, well, don't listen to anybody on social media, but listen to me, right? And I'm just saying, you know, if I was coming on here and telling you that, and I had 2 million followers and I was sharing military information, I would say, yes, I'm just another person that's symbolically telling you what is going on, or what the physical happenings are. So I can totally get that. Okay, so we're talking about a time of moving forward. We're talking about a time of clarity. We're talking about something that has been in the works since 1980 or 1981 that is now physically coming to fruition. So I'm having this conversation with Tina. We are talking about the fact, she mentioned the fact, hey, you know, they use this loop and they just do this. It's like a playbook, right? I'm not a sports fan. Many of you are probably sports fans. Jesus, I can talk. But, you know, in sports, you have a play. You get the team together and you say, this is the play. This is what we're going to do. And they do it, right? So that they're not talking across the table in the middle of the chess game, or they're not on the field going, oh my gosh, okay, Jim, what are we doing next? Okay. But many of you have known, whether through physical channels, underground news, tweets from whomever you follow, that we are at a time of intense military action. And these are the things that Tina and I were discussing yesterday in between our conversation about snorkeling in Bora Bora. Okay, that comes up every time I talk to her as well. And I'm sure many of you are tired and ready for a vacation, so we intermittently sprinkle that into our conversation. This military action that you've known about, you've seen, you've felt, you've read about, all these things. We are at the absolute crescendo of this. That's why there is so much talking across the table on social media from people with thousands and millions of followers, including the government, 3-letter agencies, and our current United States president. The message here is this is physically happening. Now, let me tell you what my experience was, because I want to try to keep this very short today. I'm not sure what that message I'm not sure what that message means, what you say, she may be cloned. I don't know if you're talking about Ghislaine Maxwell, but anyway, Ghislaine was singing like a bird and talking about all this stuff. So we know it's coming out, right? We do. And, you know, when you need to clean up your house, when you need to organize your closet, you can open the door, pick out your favorite shirt, maybe without turning the light on. But when you do turn the light on, when you shine the sun or shine the light, onto a situation, you see things you've never seen before. So many of you have heard about this, whether it's your intuition or someone on social media, underground news, or even from three-letter agencies using social media. And maybe you're reading between the lines, or maybe like me, you have a detective personality where you're looking at what they're physically saying, you're looking at the symbolism, and you're also looking like at the numbers and the code that is being disseminated across the table, across the channels, across the world as this military alliance takes control of this, okay, and ends this shitstorm. Okay, so here's what I want to tell you yesterday. Now, I'm not going to go into the 2-hour conversation I had with Tina, but I am going to tell you that what we know is in the works for forever, we are now at the crescendo at. Okay, and so we did discuss many topics, but the majority of the topic yesterday that was discussed with Tina was the military action, how they go in a loop. Okay, and again, as I said, I saw that ancient painting on Ancient Aliens, and I saw all those X's in the sky. They had like the depiction was, you know, angels and demons with all these X's in the sky. That's where we are. And that's what happens every time we get to this particular loop in this solar cycle where it's time for change and it's time to return the power to the people. They start cooking up the chemtrails. Okay. Yeah. So the sky is starting to return to what it was when I was a child up until a teenager. They really didn't start inundating all areas of planet Earth with chemtrails. Not to say that they weren't using them, but they really started getting real crazy heavy. I want to say it was about 2003, 2004. That's when many people on this planet started expanding their consciousness and waking up. So we are having this conversation about the loop, about the use of chemtrails when we get to a certain conscious expansion, about the military playbook. And she had said something yesterday to me about strategy, about Putin meeting with Trump. I think she said somewhere in Alaska. Again, we can't take these things at face value, but here's the interesting part. So as I mentioned, for the new people, I'm a landscaper. I have a couple people that I work for that are property owners. The lady that I was working for the last couple of days has multiple properties in the same neighborhood where I work. So last year I had been there and redid one of the whole side of the houses. If anybody's familiar with shotgun housing, it's something they used to do in the 1800s where they build two houses with no space so they share a wall. I'm assuming in the 1800s that they did that to save money on construction. Okay, so one wall, one adjoining middle wall, but two houses. And last year I redid the entire right side of the house, but within the last 6 months, she bought the house that's on the left that's connected to it. And so now I redid that side of the house. So I've been to this property over 10 times. Now, anytime I'm removing anything, like while I was planting shrubs, so taking out the native soil and mixing the native soil and mixing soil amendments in there. Okay, so soil had to be dumped. The trees that were half dead that I dug out of the ground, they had to be dumped. So there's a huge fence line between a school property and her property that's probably 10 feet wide. And every time I pull something out, or every time I have to dump dirt or weeds or trees or whatever, I go back and dump it. Okay, so this is year number 2. I've worked at this property. I am an empath on steroids. I am a medium. I am all kinds of things. I never, ever attempt to use that mediumship in a way to talk to people on the other side or people that need to be shown the light and, no longer be stuck in that area. What I actually do, my best friend potential spam is calling. Let me hang up. Um, there's a shock. But so I'm not, I could be that kind of medium, but I choose not to. Now, it has happened more times than I can count with relatives crossed over on the other side. I'm saying all this to tell you that I am a medium to energy, and specifically, I do not do mediumship to the other side unless it's passed over family members. That being said, I worked at this property last year and I've worked at this property for 4 days this year. I never feel a heavy energy there. I never feel that there's anything watching me, anything observing me, none of that. Okay. So I'm talking to Tina, and I don't know how I did this in this heat and humidity. I'm carrying big buckets of dirt and dumping them over the back fence. And I have my cell phone sitting on that bucket of dirt. And I talked to her the whole hour and a half that I was there digging holes and planting trees. We stayed on the phone, and I just carried the bucket of whatever I was dumping with the phone on it so we could continue the conversation about the military. Okay. So planting trees, talking on the phone. I've been to this property more than 10 times. And like I said, everything gets dumped over the fence. Now, this year, in the last 3 days, I have dumped things over the fence 100 times. No one's ever there. No one's ever watching me. No one's surveilling me. There's no ghost from the other side. There's nothing that needs to be crossed over. The energy field is very clean at this house. I've never felt a presence there with me. I've never heard any strange noises, anything like that. I went back to dump a bucket of soil, and I'm still on the phone with her. And I dumped that bucket, turned my back on the fence, and went to walk up for the next bucket of soil. When I turned my back on that fence and started walking back to the front of the yard, I felt a huge presence behind me, as if my intuition was almost picking up on a giant. Okay, so picking up on a physical, what felt like a huge presence. If I had to describe intuitively how that presence would feel, I would say the presence was 8 feet tall and maybe 300 or 400 pounds. And I'm talking about feeling it, not seeing it. So I dump it, I turn my back to the fence, and I go to walk up to get the next bucket. And I feel this incredibly huge, giant energy. Like I said, if I had to put it into words, 7, 8 feet tall, 400 pounds is what it felt like. A huge presence behind me, as if my intuition was picking up on a giant behind me. But I really and immediately knew it wasn't a giant walking behind me. It was just a giant energy. I knew that instantaneously. But it felt like a person. It felt like a person's energy. And then what I heard was the stomping of combat boots. Now, I've had several friends in the military who wore combat boots for many years after being in the military. If you are a blue-ray and highly sensitive to sound like me, you have thousands, some of you tens of thousands of sounds memorized. I felt this energy that was hundreds of pounds, 7 or 8 feet tall. I knew it wasn't a person, it was just an energy. But when I heard combat boots walking, military style walking with combat boot, the sound I heard was combat boot hitting the pavement. I heard the stomping of combat boots, and it was so loud and so vibrational that I could feel physically the ground moving. Okay. Then I got the entire body chills and forced myself to turn around, knowing that there was no one physically behind me, but I was still completely and totally urged to check, because the stomping of military combat boots, the presence of an energy that appeared as if it was a physical giant. Just as I was doing that, I get the full body chills when I turn around and there's nothing there, but I still felt it even though I couldn't see it. Then Tina said, hello, what's happening? Are you still there? And I said, oh my God, yes, I'm here. And then I explained to her as I was walking from the back of the house to the front of the house that it was shaking and it felt like a giant was behind me and I could hear the stomping of military boots. But I turned around and there was no one there. So we both had the chills at that point, right? So now I'm at the front of the house. I walk to the other side of the house. Okay, so the right side of the house where I felt the presence and heard the military stomping was on the right side, which the right side, now that I'm thinking about it, is the plan, it is the action, divine masculine, the projection, the happening, the action. When I go to the left side of the house where it's clear, mostly clear, like you couldn't get anything in the back of the house. You couldn't drive a car there or anything like you can on the left side of the house. Okay. This is just coming to me now. I walked back to the front of the house and the ground was shaking again. And this time the shaking was even louder. I looked up and saw a military helicopter flying overhead. Okay. The street I'm working on, most of the houses are late 1800s, early 1900s. At that point, they all had a basement that was slightly raised above ground level and an additional 3 stories. So we're talking about every house on that street was pretty much 30 to, I'd say probably 30 feet, maybe close to 35. I looked up and I said, oh my God, it's a military helicopter. And it was flying so crazy, like going side to side. It wasn't just coming straight through and passing over me. And I said, oh my God, there's a helicopter. And there was another one chasing behind it. It literally looked like a movie scene. Okay. But they were so close to me that I was almost certain they were going to run into the top of one of these businesses, churches, or houses. That's how close they were to the ground. So they were literally a foot or two above the house. So they're probably only, 30 to 33 feet off the ground. And that was totally crazy because I'm like, hey, some presence is walking behind me, stomping in military boots. And gosh, what was it? It was 30 seconds, under a minute. I was on the other side of the house. And now we have these 2 huge helicopters that are so low, they almost crashed into this building. I have never, ever seen anything in the air be so close to the ground in my entire life. And as soon as I started to describe what this one helicopter looked like to Tina, another one came right behind it. And as soon as the first helicopter came up, because I had her on speakerphone the entire time, but as soon as the first helicopter came through, I had my phone in my hand. I hit the camera button. One helicopter, within seconds, another. Again, not only were these helicopters so close to these buildings that I swore they were going to crash into them, they were so close to together. I don't even know how they could fly like that. I'm not military. No one in my family is military. I'm sure, I'm just describing to you what it looked like and what it felt like to me. Like inevitably they were going to either crash into the ground or crash into a building. They were flying at a speed that from the time I saw them, actually I heard them first. So I already had my hand on the camera button. Before I could even hit the camera button, they were both out of sight. This was how quick this was. I'm telling you this because again, I only shared in brevity with you the military conversation had between Tina and myself. Is this coming to fruition? What's going on with the street strategy? Where are we in this thing? Where are we in our forward movement? Where are we in the physical happening of the reset, of the reevaluation of currency, of the alliance working together to make the movement that makes something happen, that gives us the clarity and the knowledge and the understanding that, yes, it is physically happening. That was the whole conversation. That's why I wanted to share really the military experience that had happened to me yesterday. Anyone who's been following me for a couple years knows I really backed off of military information because the things that can happen to me after I do them, and many of you know what those experiences actually were. It is happening. We are seeing the signs of it in physical reaction, in reality, right? It's becoming physical. It's no longer a thought. It's no longer the underground news. It's no longer an emotion. It's no longer just your intuition. Physically happening. We are physically moving forward. And just remember to take everything you see on social media with three-letter agencies, our president, and people in the alliance with thousands, possibly millions of viewers, then know that they are talking across the table in a chess game. You feel it, you know it. This is just nothing more than confirmation for you. It's time to take flight in the unexpected in a magical direction. Leave space for spontaneity. Leave space for your intuition to really guide you and be your compass. If you're one of those people that have watched this for a year, maybe some of you for decades, are very interested in the physical happenings on Earth, on the planet, what is being happened, where are we in losing the manipulation, control, and usurpment of this planet, where are we in the working together of the military, of the alliance, and of all these people working together, and how are we moving forward, okay? So what I'm telling you is military action is about to have light shed on it. We are at a massive turning point where everyone that has worked together, and as I explained to Mark earlier, even though I don't have millions of viewers, even though I'm not talking across the table to you, giving you code, giving you pieces to the equation, I'm doing that through intuition and sharing my experiences with you. Now, all of us that are doing that, we are very much a part of the alliance too. And what I was saying is, when you're talking about military strategy, when you're talking about people giving hints or doing their chess move on social media in the form of a written code, okay? Now, again, to reiterate and explain partially what Mark had asked, no, probably someone is not going to come on here and make an hour video or a 5-hour video like me to give intel that is specifically designed so that the other players and the other parts of the alliance know what's going to happen. We are part of the alliance in every way, energetically, spiritually, physically, okay? But when it comes to you and I being part of the equation, part of the alliance, we know that we are. We know that we came here to do this. But what I'm specifically saying to you is, nobody in the alliance or a 3-letter agency is going to watch my hour-long video or somebody's 5-hour-long video to get a clue, okay? So when I'm talking about keeping in mind that these things are symbolic, these things are code, these things are part of the playbook. So the 3-letter agencies, the president, all the parts of the moving parts of the alliance know where we are working within this plan. What chapter are we on? What page are we on? Whatever. Okay, so I am part of the alliance. You are part of the alliance. We couldn't do this without every single person being involved and being active and proactive in this. When I'm saying don't take everything you hear, see at face value, I'm specifically talking about Twitter and any social media platform where they are sharing perhaps a few words or a few sentences and talking across the table. Again, in the middle of a military crescendo, nobody in the alliance is going to watch my, hour video or your 5-hour video to disseminate, the information. They are going to do code words and numbers and keywords and certain phrases so they know physically where we are at in this military action. I hope I've explained that well and that you understand what I was saying. So there you go. All right. Thank you guys so much for being here. Hopefully that makes sense to you and you understand what I'm saying, where we are. I'm talking about clarity, a time of movement, a time of crescendo. And all of you, as I said, myself included, are part of this military alliance, and we are doing many things. Even if you're not on social media, even if you're not making videos, you're not tweeting, or you're not sharing in this way, we all the organic human life forms on this planet are part of the ascension process. We're part of this military action. Thank you so much for doing your part, and thank you so much for being here. And until next time, stay positive and know the biggest message I'm telling you right now, militarily, it is physically happening. Thank you so much for being here. Bye.